a lot of people believe that the manner in which the West used to view Islam changed greatly after 9/11. However, 9/11 is not to be held accountable for the many prejudices which the Western countries harbor about Islam. Now, these prejudices are centuries old. In fact, in the year 1978 or 1979, in the April edition of the Time magazine, the late great Edward Said stated that some 60,000 books had been written in order to disparage Islam and Muslims. Now, there are a whole galaxy of prejudices which are harbored about Islam in the West. But the most predominant prejudice, or the wisest prejudice, is regarding the doctrine of jihad. And this prejudice is so very wise because it is not only relegated to the Westerners, but it also includes Muslims within its ambit. The Westerners are just as ill-informed about jihad as Muslims are. And so the question is, what is jihad? Now, usually a Muslim or a Westerner or anybody, if you ask that person about jihad, he will say that jihad is the holy war of Muslims. And this is precisely where the problem begins. The word jihad does not mean holy war. The word jihad means to strive or to struggle. Now, if you go to the Muslim book of authority, that is the Quran, it is considered to be comprising of some 7,500 verses and 78,000 words. Now, the word jihad appears 41 times in the Quran in 35 verses. Now, the important thing over here is to realize that out of these 35 verses, 31 verses have no reference to fighting or killing. Right? The term used in the Quran for fighting is not jihad. The term used is qital, and the term used for war is harb. So jihad is basically a struggle for righteousness, which is of 4 to 5 types. The first type is jihad bin nafs, which is considered to be jihad-e-akbar, which is the greatest jihad. Now, in this jihad, the people, the Muslims, or the ones who submit their will to God or submit themselves to the will of God, they are expected to live their life as per God's commandments, and they are supposed to strive against themselves in order to become better human beings. This is the first jihad, which is jihad bin nafs. The second jihad is jihad bin ilm, which is wholly concerted towards achieving knowledge. And two fundamental words emerge out of this kind of jihad. The first one is ijtihad, which means reasoning, and the second one is mujtihad, which means reasoner. The third jihad is jihad bin amal, which is purely, striving for societal good. The fourth jihad is jihad bin mal, which is principally an act of charity. And the fifth jihad is the jihad bin qital, which primarily, accounts for fighting. Now, we need to realize over here, why do you need to fight? Suppose somebody attacks you, then you have, a natural right to fight back and save your life. For example, when Britain was under attack during World War II, when Soviet Union was under attack during World War II, when the United States was under attack during World War II, all these countries fought back. Britain fought back against Germany, Soviet Union fought back against Germany, United States too joined in the war and bombarded Japan, and the rest is history. So in the house of Islam, under the doctrine of jihad, Muslims have been granted the right to self-defense. But it is not as many fanatic Muslims and Islamist murderers consider it to be. For example, recently we had this particular beheading of a soldier in England, which is so very worrisome and condemnable. And the attacker, he was seen, speaking to the camera, in which he said, in our holy book, in one of the chapters, Surah Tawbah, we are told, fight them as they fight you. Now, the grounds of war, the rules of war, have been very clearly laid down in the house of Islam. And the first among those is that a formal declaration of war has to be made. That declaration can be made only by the state. While fighting, you cannot hurt women, you cannot hurt children, you cannot hurt elderly people, you cannot hurt religious people, you cannot break down religious places of worship or monasteries. No harm is to be done to civilian areas. You cannot harm traders, employers, agriculturists. You cannot slay animals, you cannot burn crops, you cannot uproot trees, you cannot mutilate dead bodies, you cannot torture the enemy, you cannot cut off the supply of water to the enemy, you cannot kill anybody who's given up on arms. You are not, supposed to fight merely for the purpose of acquiring land. You're not supposed to show, pomp and show after pomp. You're not supposed to celebrate wildly after winning the battle. And there are extensive rules. So, in the Islamic sense of the term, whenever jihad implies war, which is harb, the Arabic word for war, it basically implies a just war, a defensive war, which is fought when somebody attacks you, or a preemptive defense war, which in another sense can be an offensive war, in the sense that somebody is going to attack you, and so you go in for preemptive defense and you attack that person before that person attacks you. So jihad, in the simplest sense of the term, means to strive or to struggle. And you may be amazed to know that there is not even a single verse in the Holy Quran where the word jihad, which means to strive or to struggle, has been used alongside the word qital, which means to fight. And this proves that the doctrine of jihad has got very little to do with waging war or creating bloodshed, as is normally perceived by Westerners, by Muslims, by Asians, and by the world at large.